So Empire of Light is the new film by Sam Mendes. And you might remember that the last film that Sam Mendes did was 1917. The film from 2019, the World War One epic, that was notable for having basically the long continuous shot through the battlefield. There was lots of action and intensity within that film. So for his follow-up film to be Empire of Light, it's I'll be honest, not as much action. You're gonna get a little bit of whiplash here, because instead of going for like the big bold action extravaganza, here it's much smaller, simpler, and much more emotionally engaging film than 1917. And that's not a slander against Empire of Light. I'm just telling you what your expectations should be here. So you have Olivia Colman playing Hilary Small, and she works at the Empire Theatre in early 1980s the UK. And she lives a quiet life. That she works at the theater. She manages the floor. She takes tickets. She invites people in. She greets them as they exit the building, and she lives a fairly quiet life. The film opens with her just managing a screening on Christmas Day, and it goes by pretty uneventfully. Nothing really happens all that much. She goes home. She has a very quiet dinner, very quiet Christmas, and then New Year's rolls around. But the closer that it gets to New Year's, she has a new hire. Michael Stephen, who's played by Michael Ward, is the newest hire, a young black man who is excited to be working in a movie theater. And so Hilary shows him the ins and outs of the theater, and eventually she's coerced into showing Stephen the upper part of the theater. Basically, the part of the theater that was abandoned. Like, it was a 4-screen cinema, and they only have 2 screens now. But upstairs, there's a bit of an abandoned area where there used to be a lounge and everything. And they go up there, and, Stephen's amazed by it, and Hilary is also like, yes, this is a place where I like to get away, and there's a few pigeons here and there, and there's not really windows, but it's still just like a wonderful place just to get away and just have a little bit of, solitude. And there's like this loving nature to it where, you feel like Hilary is inviting Stephen into her world, and they get to know each other more. Like, they bond over fixing the wing of a pigeon. So a romance slowly blooms between them. There's a little bit of an age disparity romance here. Hilary feels a little bit odd, being in this relationship, because she feels like it wouldn't really work, especially since she doesn't feel like she can be in a relationship with anyone, with her past trauma. They establish kind of a little bit subtly in the beginning that she has had trauma in the past, and she has trouble dealing with people, and also that she's being taken advantage of by others. In particular, her boss, played by Colin Firth, coerces her to come into his office every now and then to have sex with him. Either have sex with him or, pleasure him, So Hilary is kind of conflicted about getting into this relationship with Stephen, because she doesn't feel like it's something that would work, or something that she feels like she wants to pursue. So there's this very conflicted, will they, won't they, romance here, especially since Stephen is a little bit he's not sure he wants to get into this relationship as well. While this is all going down, there's a bunch of changes going on with the theater. They're getting a big new movie that's going to come in. There's changes in management, and basically Stephen also has bigger dreams for the future. He wants to be an architect, and he wants to go to school and college to study for it, but he hasn't been accepted yet. So he's just kind of working at the theater for a little while. And it's an aspect that Hilary is kind of struggling to grapple with, because she realizes that, Stephen might not be here forever. So what exactly will our relationship be, and can I continue on without him? And it's kind of it's a very sweet and sad question, because you really do feel for Hilary. There's a lot of great scenes in this film. A lot of them are, some are darkly comedic, especially a scene where Hilary confronts Colin Firth's character and reveals to his wife their affair, and basically reveals it in a kind of like Shakespearean way, but using vulgarity within her dialogue, which is so great. Like it's shocking, but at the same time, like it's hilarious how she chooses to make this grand reveal. Other times there are darker moments, like when there's a very charming scene where Hillary and Steven are at the beach and they're connecting with each other. They're just talking with each other while they're making a sandcastle, and Steven kind of trips over into like triggering an aspect of Hillary's past by asking about past relationships, and she just goes off like immediately, and it becomes like just like just so deeply sad to see her like that. But one of the major scenes that I found myself actually fascinated with is there's a great moment where Hillary is at her lowest. She's in her apartment. She feels like she can't come into work, that she can't face the world, that she's having mental problems. And Steven comes to comfort her. And I love the fact that Hillary bites back. She's like, look, I'll bounce back. I'm sure I will. But I got some crap to deal with. And I just want to hang out and drink. So if you want to chill with me and drink too, that's fine. But I'm not begging for your help. And I love that the fact that like she has like a mental disorder, but she has like an awareness and an agency to it, where she's willing to bite back, and she kind of like knows the process of what's going to happen when she becomes more of like an upstart, and like institutions take note of her. She's very much kind of aware of that process, where even though she is crumbling, she is somewhat aware of herself and also how others treat her. So like there's a moment where you feel like Steven is struggling to kind of like show empathy, and he's tripping all over himself. Like he can't quite show the empathy, and it comes off as pity, and Hillary just bites back. And it is so satisfying to have that moment in a movie where someone with a mental disorder is not someone who's just there to be pitied, but like someone who is dealing with some rough stuff and just needs and doesn't need someone exactly to help, but someone to be there and someone to listen to them, which I found was such a cool aspect to have in this film. At the same time, Steven's character is also fascinating for being someone who's aware of like the racial tensions of that era. And even though he's a nice guy, like if he's pushed just a little bit too far, he'll want to like bite back just as much. Except he doesn't do it as much because he's aware of what's going to happen. Like he knows that if he fights back too much, he's going to get into a fight. And with how many racists there were running around the UK at the time, it felt like it was a dangerous time. Like, and there's a moment where it's just like he's overwhelmed with rage and fury and just gets the crap kicked out of him. And it's shocking, especially like when it comes after such like a beautiful moment of like togetherness in the theater. It erupts into violence once there are like rioters in the streets that come in and assault him on the basis of racism. And I love how the aftermath of that scene is basically Hillary trying to find a way to comfort Steven in the hospital while not, going into areas where she feels like she shouldn't, especially since she runs into like Steven's mother while they're in the hospital and realize that, ooh, this is not going to look good if Steven's mom thinks that we're in a relationship. So kind of got to tread lightly. And it's one of those things that like you feel like Hillary can't avoid, and it does eventually come out. But it's one of those like awkward situations where you feel like people are trying to tread lightly just because they love each other so much. Now for a film that's being set at a movie theater in the 1980s, there is definitely a little bit of like a love letter to the cinema here, especially when there's a scene where you get the shot, if you know what I mean. Like a lot of people refer to this like there's like, how like in The Fabelmans it opens with like the Steven Spielberg type character going into the movies for the first time and looking up at the screen and the light comes on his face and he's just amazed and overwhelmed by movies. You get that same shot within Empire of Light. Like they established that Hillary hasn't watched much movies in the theater and she doesn't really watch anything at the Empire Cinema. But then she eventually realized that, oh, maybe I should give it a try. And she ends up watching Being There, the Peter Sellers movie, in the theater all by herself, just sitting there alone, gazing up at the screen. and the big grin comes on her face, and like that's like the key moment you want to have. Is like the love letter to cinema. The good news is that unlike other films that would kind of just languish on or that would just kind of like linger on the cinema aspect, the aspect of the theater and what movies mean to people is treated more as kind of like an emotional, I'm trying to find the right words, but like a peppering more than like the central theme, because it's ultimately not like movies that bring Hillary and Steven together, but it is like one aspect that does make them connect a little bit more. Like, cause Steven brings up how he really likes movies and like says that Hillary should check out some, and eventually Hillary does, and she realizes the magic of it. And you also get a very emotional moment where you have Toby Jones playing the projectionist, and Toby Jones speaks with Steven and shows him like how the projectors work, and like the ins and outs of what makes the what brings like the film strips to life, and also divulges a little bit of like the philosophy on how it's light that brings out the life within these film strips and takes away like the darkness in between. So a little bit metaphorical, that they a little bit more obvious, I guess, with the metaphor there, but it does play well into the fact that like there is like troubled times and you're gonna face some darkness in your life, but that there's always a little bit of light somewhere in there. And the film is all about just finding those little moments of emotional like care and depth that make life worth living. Like, life is tough, there's always going to be problems and challenges, and Empire of Light doesn't want to shy away from like the issues that come with mental disorders and and racism that happens within the era, but also trying to find little moments of like victory here and there and the brighter side, and basically just trying to find any reason you can to just keep on going and just keep on living and establish like great bonds. Like, I love the fact that, like, I mentioned a few of the characters, like like Toby Jones, Michael Ward, and Colin Firth, but I like the fact that all the employees there, with the exception of Colin Firth's character, obviously, they all have some emotional depth to them that makes you care and love for them. Like, at first, I thought Toby Jones is just kind of going to be like the curmudgeon-y projectionist, because like he spends the entire film just talking about the projector, just does nothing but that. Like, even in the break room with small talk, all he's talking, like, he's just talking about like, oh well, if you smoke cigarettes you're gonna ruin the projector, so I'm trying to like get like a ban on cigarettes within like the theater. But later on you actually learn that, oh, actually like this character actually has something that he's been running from. Like, he has family that he hasn't visited, and he just can't bring himself to be with them. But he ends up finding a bit of a new family with people like Hillary and Steven. And you get to know a few other characters. Like, there's an eccentric guy with glasses there who has such like a chipper and fun attitude, but he's also very smart and aware of what's going on with like the internal politics of the theater. And you just get to know and like these people, that it's just sweet to just hang out with them for a bit and just learn what their problems are and what their little joys are, and how they celebrate the New Year's, and how they will celebrate a big film coming to their theater, and just trying to make life a little bit brighter. And as corny as that sounds, it works for this type of film. Like, this is definitely not going to be everyone's type of film, because I feel like it puts a little bit too much of like the rose-colored glasses on there for how it portrays like the cinema, and how it almost kind of approaches this like material that seems like it would be very vicious, with almost kind of like very gentle gloves for this type of story. At the same time, however, in terms of being like a romantic drama set in the 1980s, that is somewhat aware of the conflicts of the era, it works well. And I think it's mostly just because of the chemistry between Olivia Colman and Michael Ward, just because they're such lovable characters in this film, and you just want the best for them, that you're rooting through them throughout the entire film with every little step they take towards bettering themselves. And it ultimately leaves you just feeling good by the end of the film. Like I love the fact that how Hillary is like, she has an obsession with poetry, but it's not like it's kind of integrated the same way that like that movies are integrated, where it's not like the thing of the film. Like you don't get to see a lot of Hillary's poetry, but when you get to see her like read off something powerful by the end of the film, you feel like it actually has like a lot of greater meaning and a contemplation of our time on this earth, and just being a good person and just finding people to like just hang out with. Because some of like the greatest moments in this film are just when characters are hanging out and having a drink and just having small talk in the break room. Just I almost kind of wish like this film were a little bit longer. It comes in at like just under 2 hours, and it's one of those films where it's like it breezes by so quickly. Like it's edited so fast that it kind of like zooms from one patch of time to the next almost seamlessly, that you're just kind of like, wait, hang on, I want to spend some more time with these characters. I kind of love them. I want to see what other fun quirks they have, especially since there's this kind of like 80s punk girl working there who I feel like we didn't get to know enough about her. I want to know what it feels like. We get to know enough about every other character. I want to know more about her. I want to hang out with everyone at this theater just because they're all such wonderful and lovable characters. But for the time that we do get to spend with all of them in Empire of Light, it's such a delightful film, and it makes you feel good by the end.